the nurse has gone through like, do you smoke? Do you drink? And I'm like, listen, I've never had a sip of alcohol. I've never drunk. I've never done any drugs. Well, she put me in as recovering alcoholic, previously a chain smoker, and occasionally does drugs.
What?
Yeah.
I'm Kayla Heater, follower of Jesus, wife and mother of 6 children, Christian childbirth educator and doula, and your host of the Surrendered Birth Stories podcast, where we share God-centered birth stories, evidence-based birth education, and our pursuit of surrendering our birth plans to God. Let's get started. Hi, everyone. I hope your week is off to a great start, and I really hope mine is too. I just finished praying for my daughter before she went to bed, and I'm recording this pretty late before I go to bed, as to not forget like I did a couple weeks ago. And I prayed that our week would start off great because sometimes Mondays are hard. It's supposed to at least be sunny here, even if it is going to be cold, but from last week's episode, when I was asking y'all to leave a review, I hadn't done that in a while. I did want to read a review I got on Google, which was great. So this isn't a review of the podcast. It's actually a review of my childbirth class. So this person says, I took the online childbirth class because I live in California and I wanted a Christian birth course. I also took the Bradley method because I heard it was the best. But I must say that the Surrendered Birth course is so much, in all capital letters, so much better than the Bradley method. It is truly comprehensive, covering a wide range of topics. Plus, it has information for hospital birth, home birth, and birth center, so you can make your own best decision on where to deliver. The best part is the Christian perspective, though. I cannot recommend this childbirth course enough. It's the best out there. That was from Patricia. I just want to say thank you so much for that raving review. That warmed my heart so much to read that. And it's funny because I often do, if one of my clients tells me they're taking the Bradley method course, I'll say, okay, like that's the only one I really let fly besides my course, because it is pretty long and usually very helpful in preparation for birth. So when I saw this review, that just, I don't know, gave me all the good feels. So I wanted to read it and share that. I think Bradley is a great course, but she's right, it's not Christian. And it isn't as fully comprehensive, I don't think. So if you are thinking about childbirth classes, or you know someone who's pregnant and you think they need a class, whether it's their first, second, third, whatever pregnancy, we would love for you to take the Surrendered Birth course. It is my heart and soul and passion. I'm getting super excited because next week I actually start teaching another in-person class for those people here in the Triad. So, but if that's not you, then our online course is available to you at all times. All you have to do is click the link in the show notes and it will take you right to it. Okay, I am going to get into this week's episode, and this is a 2-parter. So this is going to be week 1 of 2 weeks for this particular episode. So I'm excited for you guys to hear the first half of Lycie's story. When you grow up with a midwife as your mother, and you and your siblings were all born at home, planning a home birth for your first doesn't seem strange at all. And it wasn't for Lycie and her husband. While it was long, all was going well until the midwife realized how badly she had torn and felt better about sending her to the hospital for her repair. That's where the trauma started, the moment they called 911. From the EMT staff to the nursing staff to the OB staff, Lycie was met with unpleasant encounter after unpleasant encounter and was definitely being treated unfairly because of her decision to home birth. Find out how Lycie was eventually able to want to birth again. And yes, at home again, but this time without the postpartum hospital transfer. Welcome to another episode of Surrendered Birth Stories. I am your host, Kayla Heater, and I have Lycie with me today. Lycie, just take a second, introduce yourself, your family, and let us get to know you and what your day to day life is like.
Hi, I'm Lycie Ross, and I am a wife, a mom, and most importantly, a Christian. My favorite hobbies, I love to do things like milling my own flour and making bread. I sew. I'm very crafty. My life looks like being a stay at home mom chasing around three girls under the age of four.
3 under 4. Nice. You're in the thick of the littles.
I am.
Well, let's dive in then. So let's go back to your first pregnancy. So, can you tell us just the story there of getting pregnant for the first time? What was that like?
Yeah, so my husband and I got married in 2020. So
Oh, joy.
it was fun. We got engaged like 2 weeks after the shutdown. So that was very, very fun. My husband he was in college at the time and he flew back to California and then flew back on a completely empty plane. He proposed and then we ended up getting married in December. And about 4 months into marriage, I was working a factory job making little Debbie's. And I came home one day and I hated my job. I was like, honey, I just want to be a stay at home mom. He looked at me and he laughed. He's like, well, we don't have any kids. I was like, please get me pregnant. Like, and he looked at me and laughed. He's like, you're 20. And so we prayed about it. We decided we were going to pray about it. And so we prayed and we're like, okay, we'll try one time. And we were using natural family planning because I'm very averse to taking any kind of medications. And so when we got married, I was like, okay, what can I do that's not going to cause problems? Because a backstory for my family, my mom and dad, it took them 9 years to get pregnant, most likely because the birth control my mom was put on to control cysts when she was in high school. And so for me, I was terrified to take that. And I thought it would take us a while to get pregnant to begin with. And so we'd been married, like I said, about 4 years or 4 months, not 4 years, about 4 months. And I was just so ready. We decided we'd try one time. And so we waited for my fertile window and we tried. And a couple weeks later, it was my birthday. So it's 10 days past ovulation. It's my birthday weekend. My mom had come down to visit me. My brothers are there. So my whole family's in town. And I had been just getting the most random symptom in the world. My eye was twitching.
Hmm.
What in the world? And so I Google, like, why is my eye twitching? Most random thing. And it says eye twitching is a common sign of pregnancy, according to Google. And I'm like, I've never heard this in my life. But I called my husband jokingly. I was like, hey, Google says I'm pregnant. And both of us are like laughing hysterically, thinking it's the first month. There's no way. And so it's the morning before my 21st birthday. I take a test and I stick it under the pills, thinking there's no way that I'm pregnant. But my whole family is in the living room. And so I walk out there and we're chatting away and having a great time. And then I walk back in and make my bed and I walk back in the bathroom. I'm like, oh, well, if it's positive, it'll be positive by now. So I pull it out from underneath the towels in my linen closet and I look at it and it is a clear second line. And I just went into shock. And then my husband comes around the corner. I shove it back into the towels, close the door, and he's like, you want to come out, back out. Your family's outside. And I'm like, uh-huh. And I'm just trying to digest the fact that I'm pregnant. And my husband is completely oblivious.
You didn't tell him in that moment?
I wanted it to be special, so I didn't tell him in the moment. And I also knew that if I told him in the moment, that like my whole family would know immediately. And I wanted it to just be between us at first. So I just sat there holding all this in for like 6 hours and it was killing me because I am a talker and I tell my husband everything. So I was sitting there trying to hold it in. And then my family had to go back up to Michigan and we were living in Tennessee at the time. And so we're having a great time, but I'm just sitting on this. And we come home after having breakfast with my sister at her place. And I told my husband, I was like, I have a special birthday gift from me to you. He's like, but it's your birthday. I was like, well, it's special. And so I like locked him in the room, pulled out my Cricut and like made a little baby. I ran to town, grabbed a onesie and made a little onesie that said "Hello Daddy" on it. And I wrapped up the onesie around a test and put it in a bag. And I handed it to my husband. He was like, honey, it's your birthday. You're not supposed to be giving me anything. And then he opens it up and it just falls into his lap. And then he goes into shock for like a solid half hour because neither of us were expecting to get pregnant immediately. So we were just sitting there in shock, looking at each other, and we're like, okay, we've got to do this. But this is May of 2021. And what I didn't realize at the time is because of COVID and all of this stuff around that, like it's very hard to find a midwife. And my mom's a midwife. So that was completely normal to me. I was born at home. My siblings were born at home. And that's all I'd ever witnessed. Like my mom would come home from doing home births and we talk about placentas around the dinner table. So it was completely normalized to me as a child. And that's what I expected to have. But I knew that my mom wasn't licensed in my state. So I was like, okay, now I've got to find a midwife. So I start looking for a home birth midwife and I called up this one midwife. I'm a research hog. I love research. And so I start like going down all these rabbit trails and researching. And I go, okay, this midwife has the best reviews, all of this. So I messaged her and then I sat on it for like 2 weeks and she didn't respond. And eventually she responds and she goes, oh, I'm sorry, I'm fully booked. And I'm like 8 weeks pregnant at the time. So I'm
Mhm.
still very early. And I start like freaking out. I'm like, God, this is the best midwife in the area. I can't find anybody else. And I start calling all of the other midwives that I can, and most of them are already booked. And I'm freaking out because I'm like, I don't want a hospital birth. Like, I knew I did not want a hospital birth. And so I'm just running around. I'm like, okay, God, bring the midwife that I'm supposed to have. And just surrendered it to God. And I call up one midwife and she goes, so I am no longer practicing, but here's the name of a midwife who's new to the area and she is practicing. So I call her up, I set up an appointment. And then for my first appointment, I go in there and we start talking and I'm like, this is exactly what I want. She was a mom of 6 at the time and the sweetest woman on the planet. I would give my kidney to her. So sweet. And we just hit it off. And so God worked all of that out. And my pregnancy symptoms were very mild. I didn't get any morning sickness. It was literally the eye twitching, and it has happened all 3 of my pregnancies.
That is so funny because I've never heard of that either. When you said that, I was like, that, nope, I've never heard that before.
And I hadn't either. And I called my mom like after I told her like I don't know, I kept it in for like 4 days. But and I called her up. She's like, "I've never heard of this." Like, "Well, you've delivered hundreds of babies." She's like, "I've never heard of it." So I I sat there and I was like, "Well, that's my symptom." And every time, and it's the only time I ever get eye twitching.
Do you have it the whole pregnancy or just initially?
Just initially. It's
Okay.
just in the first, like, couple of months. So, also, I called up my in-laws before I knew I was pregnant. I'd ovulated and conceived her, but I had no idea I was pregnant, and it was Mother's Day of that year, and I call up my mother-in-law, wish her a happy Mother's Day, and what I didn't know is when she hung up, her best friend looks over, and she goes, "She's pregnant," and I'm like and she goes, "No, she's not." She's like, "Trust me, she's pregnant." This woman is my human pregnancy test. She can tell me I'm pregnant before I know every time.
You're a mother-in-law's friend?
Mhm.
Wow.
She's a really close family friend. But anyway, so I go through my pregnancy and everything is perfect. Like I had no morning sickness. It's very, very easy. And then I get to about a month before I'm due and I start getting really antsy and very impatient.
Mhm.
And my mom had me, I came voluntarily at 37 weeks. So I had it in my mind, well, I came early. my kids are going to come early too.
Yikes.
Big mistake. So my husband, on the other hand, came at 42 weeks on the dot. So my kids have fallen in the difference in the middle, dead in the middle. But anyway, so I start getting really antsy. And it's like soon as I could take off work, I was very happy to not, because I was doing a very physical job. It was like the first half of my pregnancy before I told my work, I was moving like 300-pound barrels around. So very heavy manual labor job. And then they switched me to something that was just sitting, but it was like the most mindless thing in the world. And I need something to keep my mind busy. So I was so excited to like say goodbye to my job. So I took off from work and I'm just waiting. And then I think I took off as soon as I lost my mucus plug, which was 2 weeks before I had her. So it was about 38 weeks. So I lose my mucus plug and I'm like, great, I could go into labor any day. And nothing, and nothing, and nothing, and nothing. And I'm like, oh. So I keep waiting and waiting. And then I'm getting my work calling me, like, have you had the baby yet? Have you had the baby yet? I'm like, no, I haven't had the baby yet. And then it's January 23rd. I'm sitting on the couch in the afternoon and my water breaks. And so I'm like, yay, I'm going to have her like today. So I was so excited. So I run into town and I run into one of my dearest friends and a childhood friend of mine. And where I'm in Target and I see her and I'm like, my water broke, coming to give birth any day. So she's really excited for me. And she ended up being at my youngest's birth. But so she's really, really excited. And then I go home and nothing. And 48 hours later, still, I have not had her. And my midwife is like, well, make sure you're monitoring it. And luckily, because my mom had come down and she'd been there for over a week at this point. Because my mom was a midwife, she's like, okay, I'll let your mom monitor you. I'm comfortable with that. So my mom was checking me, making sure I didn't have a temperature, making sure that I was staying stable and that I wasn't getting an infection. And so I'm waiting and I was so frustrated and I start talking to God. I'm like, God, I want to have this baby. I know I'm on a time crunch now because my midwife is only comfortable with about 72 hours after water breaking. And it was definitely my water. So I'm praying and I'm talking to God. I'm like, okay, God, I give it to you. And it was about 7 p.m. on Tuesday night. I get my first contraction and I am ecstatic, but it's back labor.
Mm.
So it was straight in my back and hips. And I'm like, oh no. So around 8 or 9, my midwife got there. She's checking me and I'm definitely in labor, but I'm only about 2 centimeters dilated. And so I was so excited that I called my sister. I called my sister-in-law. I've got my mom and my midwife there. So I've got a whole party going on and I'm very extroverted. I love people. I love talking. So I want to be out in the middle of it. But every time I came out from my bedroom into my living room and I'm talking to everyone, my contractions spaced out. So they sent me to the live into my bedroom to labor. And then my contractions would get closer together and stronger. But I'd try and go back out and join all the conversations and then they'd space out. So I was like in the bedroom and my husband's sitting there just laughing at me because he knows I'm dying to join in on the conversation. But I have to be in the bedroom. So I'm sitting there on my hands and knees, laboring over the birth ball and just moving positions, doing lots of swaying, like almost a cat cow position, just over a birth ball. And that put me into active labor. So at this point, I'm hitting into active labor, and it's going pretty smooth. It's just really strong back labor. So I was living with ice packs and counter pressure. My poor husband, his arms must have been so sore the next day. But anyway, so yeah, he's just putting tons and tons of counter pressure on. And that goes through the night until like I'm sitting there at probably 11 p.m. I'm like, oh man, it'd be so nice to have this baby today. I'm like, well, you might be able to. At this point, now that I'm in active labor, I'm able to go into the living room and join everybody else.
Yeah.
And so I was able to join everybody else in the living room, and we're just enjoying ourselves, and I'm through contractions. My contractions are probably about 5 minutes apart at this time, and then they're starting to get closer and closer. And then I start to see the sun come up, and I'm just so discouraged because I didn't have the baby in the middle of the night. It's morning already. And so I'm very discouraged, but I am also starting to hit labor land at this point where I'm not really perceiving everything around me. So meanwhile, my sister's there like passing out snacks like they're candy, but I'm also feeling like a watched pod. So it's not helping at all. And then around 10 a.m., I start to hit transition. So I've gotten into the water at this point, and the water, it's amazing. I don't know why I labored so long without it, but I gotten into the water, and it was everything. So my husband is still, poor thing, holding ice packs and doing counter pressure on me, but I'm in the water. And that was feeling amazing. And then around 10:30, I just have to get out of the water. Now, looking back, I was hitting transition and I have no idea why, but I could not stand to be in the water. I had to get out. So I got out, I laid on my side, and I just get like this 15-minute breather, and it was wonderful. Like there's no contractions. She had just flipped from being posterior.
Mm.
And so my back isn't aching anymore. It just feels amazing. So about 15 minutes, and then I start getting my pushing contractions. And so I crawled back into the water, and I'm sitting in like a semi-reclined kind of position. And I start pushing, and it was only about 20 minutes. And I'm pushing. And then my mom looks at me and she's like, Lycie, reach down. So I reached down and I realized that what they've been seeing for the past 5 minutes is her head. And I was just so stuck on the fact I thought she was still completely in and I was going nowhere with pushing. And so I reached down and I realized that her head is right there. And so I'm like, wait, she's here. And I just lit up. I was so excited. All the exhaustion completely disappeared. And I'm like, she's right here. So I push with all of my might. And about 5 minutes into this, she comes flying out of me. There was one slight problem though. She had both of her hands on her head.
Mm-mm-mm. Which
So
widens the
yeah.
diameter that you needed to push her out.
Yes. So, and my mom was trying to coach me like slow down, but I was just so excited that she was here that I just wanted her out. So she comes flying out. And I pull her up and I like she almost immediately latched. And I look down at her and she's just rolls and rolls. She's got all these fat rolls. I'm like, you're such a chubby little thing. When we finally weighed her, she was 9 pounds, 4 ounces.
Mm-hmm.
So she was quite the chubby girl. And then my midwife is looking and she's seeing the pool starting to fill up with blood. And she's like, Lycie, I think I want you to come out. So I crawl out of the pool and I'm laying down on my side on some Chuck's pads. And I think it was about that time I deliver my placenta. And she's looking at my tear. And I was like, how bad is it? She's like, well, it's a 3rd-degree tear. And then I black out.
Oh. If this podcast has been with you through pregnancy, labor, or those quiet postpartum moments, and it's helped you feel more confident, grounded, or less alone, I want to share something new. You can now support the show with a small monthly donation or a one-time gift. Your support helps keep these conversations going and makes this resource available to parents who really need it. If this show has supported you in this season of life, I'd be so grateful if you'd consider supporting it back. Visit the show notes to find the link to donate. I truly thank you for being a part of the Surrendered Birth community.
They they pulled out the smelling salts and brought me back too. And they're like, okay, Lycie, your bleeding is a little more than we want. And my mom looks at me, she's like, I've sewn up 3rd-degree tears before, but you're really not supposed to do that at home. So let's see if we can get you into the hospital just for them to sew you up. Because at this point, my uterus is completely clamped down. So they're like, it's not your uterus that you're bleeding
Okay,
from.
that's what I was going to ask. It wasn't like you were hemorrhaging, it's just simply from how bad the tear is.
I was hemorrhaging from my tear. My uterus was completely doing everything it was supposed to do. My tear, on the other hand, so they described it to me like I was torn all the way to the wall of my rectum, and then internally I was torn sideways again. So
Oh.
my sister-in-law, who's a nurse, she said it looked like there were pieces that were just hanging.
Oh.
So my eldest quite literally plowed her way out. I was just still blacking out. So they tried to get me to stand up. As they tried to pull me up, I blacked out again. So they're like, okay, well, let's try this again. Maybe we can get you into the car. So they had me lay down for a little bit longer. I'm still bleeding. And as they try and get me up a 3rd time, I passed a clot the size of a burrito
From your tear?
on my tear.
That must have been a mighty tear.
Yeah. Well, we'll get into the recovery from that in a minute, but
Oof.
it was rough. So at this point, they're like, forget the car. We're going to call the ambulance.
Yeah.
So the ambulance is like station is at the end of my street, less than a mile away. So like ambulance should be here any minute. The hospital's 7 minutes. It takes the ambulance half an hour to get there. And when I arrived and I was coherent again, because they brought me back with smelling salts, because at this point I've passed out 3 times.
Yeah.
And so they brought me back too. And the ambulance or the paramedics, they're like, well, she's coherent. We're going to code her as non-emergent.
Oh boy. Which
So,
extends the process, I'm sure.
oh, yes, for sure. So, yeah, anyway, I am loaded into the ambulance. And then they're like, oh, well, we want your insurance card. And they have to go through, like, they want my name and all of my information, my social security number. They wanted everything right there before they even left. So it's half an hour that I'm now sitting in the driveway. It's probably an hour and a half post birth at this point. So she was born at 11:10 a.m. and we're like almost 1 in the afternoon.
And you're still just bleeding.
At this point, my mom and my midwife are both like furious. They're like, she is white as a sheet. She is losing blood like crazy. When the ambulance got there, they hooked me up. My mom had already stuck me, so they hooked me up to an IV. And I'm loaded into the ambulance. And then we finally get going once they've got all my insurance and they've got everything else.
Which sort of defeats the purpose of calling the ambulance because you're like, well, gosh, we might as well have just gone ourselves. We would have been there, you know?
Yeah. And at this point, my mom and my midwife were like, well, they can sew you up, but they can also give you a blood transfusion, which we can't. And they were thinking that I'd lost enough blood to get a blood transfusion. And spoiler alert, I did, but they didn't give me one.
Oh.
So I finally get down to the hospital. It's like 1:30. And they decided that when they called the nearest hospital, they're like, well, we don't have anyone on call right now, so we're going to send you downtown. So instead of 7 minutes, it's a full half hour to the hospital.
Anyone on call, like a doctor? Like they didn't have a doctor working at the hospital?
And this is a hospital with an L&D unit.
That doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't make any sense, but they claimed they had no one on call and they couldn't take me. So I go all the way downtown. So they send me to downtown Chattanooga and they roll me on through and I get up and they, at the nurses station in the L&D unit, they want all the information that I've just given the EMTs.
Right.
And so they hand me the chart and I start writing, but I'm very slow because I've been in labor. I've been awake at this point for more than 40 hours.
Yeah.
I went into labor at 7 p.m. and I've been awake the entire day before that. And then I had her at 11. So I am exhausted from that. Plus, I've now lost tons of blood. And so I'm struggling to write down my name and all my information. So the EMT looks at me, grabs the clipboard from me, and fills out all my information. Then they wheel me into the hospital room, and I'm like, where is my mom? Like, I want my mom in here. and they won't let my mom back in. And I'm asking for my mom. My mom finally gets to the point. She's like, listen, if you don't let me in there, you need to send a patient advocate into her room right now.
Where was your husband?
He was with my daughter
At home?
at home. So they got
Oh.
her all taken care of, and they followed my mom, but my mom followed the ambulance in my car because it was COVID. So they wouldn't let my mom ride in the ambulance.
Oh,
So, but then the thought was that she'd be with me this whole time, but
you were
she
by yourself.
was completely by myself. And I'm so out of it that, yeah, it was rough. But anyway, so they finally let my mom back in after she's like, listen, she needs to be in there. And they come to me and they're like, do you want your mom in here? She's threatening us. And I'm like, yes, send my mom now. So they finally let my mom into the room. And at this point, it's 45 minutes after I arrived at the hospital. So we're well into like 2 or 3 in the afternoon. And the nurse has gone through like, do you smoke? Do you drink? And I'm like, listen, I've never had a sip of alcohol. I've never drunk. I've never done any drugs. Well, she put me in as recovering alcoholic, previously a chain smoker, and occasionally does drugs.
What? What?
Yeah, that's what, yeah.
Why? Like as typos or as in like she just didn't believe you?
So my mom told me she works in the same charting system as this hospital uses. She's like, so what she had to do was she had to pull down a drop down of does smoke. She had to go all the way to the bottom and go chain smoker. And then she had to go the same thing with the other ones, like all the way down to like recovering alcoholic, all the way down to the bottom.
Was it some
Uh,
like home birth, like transfer bias going
oh,
on or like
this
what?
this is what I think it is because after the nurses station, you could hear them going, "Oh, it's another home birth." They're so dumb. So this is unfortunately the atmosphere of that particular hospital and what I now know the general area. They're very very biased against home birth, anything natural, which
Mm.
is really sad. Because then when you actually need them, in the rare case you actually need them, they don't give you good care. So then also because I hadn't signed any forms saying that I didn't want nursing students, didn't want any kind of students there, I'm swamped with every kind of student. And when I got there, they pumped me full of 2 bags of IV fluids. So by the time I get there, I'm like, I have to pee so bad.
Yeah. And because your uterus and you just had a baby and you need to be peeing anyways. Man.
Exactly. And mind you, they've still done nothing to stop my bleeding.
Right. I'm like, meanwhile, you're still bleeding from your third degree tear.
Yes.
My gosh. I'm like, at this point, I'm like, I really wish your mom and your midwife just would have sewn you up at home.
The hospital ended up doing nothing that my mom and my midwife couldn't have done. So
Yeah.
it ended up being a very frustrating experience. So they do all this, and the attending comes in with the chief resident. And the attending starts looking at my tear and she's going, yeah, this is going to be a bit. And the resident looks at my tear and he goes, can we get a student in here to practice on her? And my mom, I've never heard my mom react to anything so fast in my life. She like chirps out, absolutely not.
You're like, this is my daughter's vagina we're talking about. We are not practicing on her vagina. Oh my God.
Exactly. So the resident or the attending goes, so this is my hospital room. No one's practicing on her. And my mom at this point starts calming down. She's like, listen, no. So the attending then, she actually has the chief resident to my tear. And she had to step in because my tear was too complex for him. So she steps in, they finish sewing me up. And what I didn't know is he decided to give me the husband stitch.
What's that?
So the husband stitch is when they sew you up tighter.
Than you were before?
Yeah. Tighter than you would be naturally. It's an old thing from like the 60s and 70s when the husbands would go, give an extra stitch there for me.
Ugh.
Yeah. So he decided all on his own that would be a great idea. And then At this point, after he finally stitches me up. Oh, and what I forgot in here as well is when they put a bedpan under me to pee, and there's like 8 residents in the room.
Watching you.
Yeah, exactly, watching me. So I try and go pee, and nothing will come out. And so they give me a catheter, and the attending and the resident both go, "Oh, you're hemorrhaging because you have a distended bladder." I'm like, no, I am hemorrhaging because of my tear. The last thing I did after I crawled out of the tub during transition, after transition, I forgot to say this, I went to the bathroom. So the last thing I did before I gave birth was go pee. There was nothing in my bladder at this point, but I'd had 2 bags of IV fluids.
Right.
So 2 bags of IV fluids, and they're blaming my tear and my hemorrhaging on the fact that my bladder was so full. So they finally drained my bladder and everything. Oh, and when they were stitching me up, I could feel everything. He was being so rough. Absolutely everything. Through the lidocaine, I could feel everything. And so I look at him and I'm like, can you do something more than this? And they go, oh yeah, we could take you into the OR and knock you out. Or no, first they gave me fentanyl.
Like through an IV?
Yeah, it was through the IV. So they give me fentanyl, and I can still feel it.
Well, yeah.
I'm like, listen, that's not strong enough, like something else. And they go, well, we can take you into the OR and knock you out. And I was like, yes, please. They completely ignore me. And my mom's like, no, she said yes. And they ignored my mom and just kept going. And I blacked out again from the pain this time. So I black out. I come to once they finish stitching me up, and they leave me in the same hospital room. I think it was an L&D room. I'm not sure whether they left me in an L&D room or a post-op room or a postpartum room. But then we're noticing it's getting kind of cold in the room. And so my husband goes over to the thermostat and tries to like heat it up. It's a late January morning, so it's freezing outside. It's like 35 degrees outside. It's freezing. And so he tries to fix the thermostat, and it is broken. So I am freezing. At this point, they've checked my hemoglobin, and it's down to a 7. And it was 14 before I gave birth.
So, that's a big drop.
Yeah. Now lost over half my blood, and they had me get up to go to the bathroom, and I pass out again. So I've now blacked out, I think 5 times total. They bring one of those side toilets, put it next to my bed, and they had me using that throughout the night. And by the time they were done stitching me up and everything, it's like 7 p.m.
Gosh.
It's about 7 p.m. and I have not eaten since I gave birth. And they're like, oh, sorry, the cafeteria is closed, so you can go to the vending machines.
Can they not have like your mom go out and get food?
So remember, it's right post-COVID.
Oh, so if she leaves, she can't come back.
Exactly. So if she leaves, she can't come back. So my husband ends up going down to the vending machines, and they have like these yogurt parfaits. So he gets me a yogurt parfait, and that ends up being my dinner.
Your big reward of your first postpartum meal after you had a baby is a vending machine yogurt parfait.
Yep.
I'm so sorry. After all that work you did, man.
Yeah, so that ends up being my dinner that night. And throughout the night, the room is just freezing. So we call them, we're like, can we change rooms? Can you get maintenance in here? They're like, yeah, we'll send someone. And they just never did.
Yeah.
So I am shaking like a leaf. My poor husband, he got there as they were stitching me up, and he's walking around the halls trying to calm down our
I'm like, what about your baby? Like she needs to eat too. Like,
yeah, so she had come in somewhere in the time when they were stitching me up. That's kind of fuzzy because I was not there.
Yeah, like, you weren't really coherent.
Not very coherent. So she came in at some point when they were stitching me up, and she nursed like immediately post-birth. Like she latched within a couple of minutes. Anyway, she ends up nursing, but she's freezing. So my husband's trying to pick her up and walk her up and down the halls. And they're like, sorry, sir, you cannot take a baby out of the bassinet if you're going to be walking up and down the halls. She has to be in the bassinet. So he puts her down in the bassinet and is trying to calm her that way. And then he puts her on top of me for a while, but I'm shaking like a leaf because the hospital blankets are as thin as anything.
And you've lost so much blood, you're probably having a hard time maintaining your own body temperature.
Exactly. So the night was very, very rough. And in the morning, my nurse, she was pretty nice. And then I'm trying to go to the bathroom, and this nurse just walks right into my room and just stands there in the hall or in front of the bathroom, just stares at me. And she's not my nurse. She's just a different nurse. And my husband looks at her, and at first he thought it was my nurse coming in. And then after her just standing there for like 20 seconds, he's like, "Excuse me, can we help you?" And he goes, "Oh, I'm just looking for her nurse." And my husband's like, "Well, she's not in here and she hasn't been in here for over an hour." And she goes, "Oh, okay." And she turns around and she leaves. Yeah, that was a very interesting little thing. We just had no idea. And also in the night, right before my mom had left, she was walking out to the car. She heard all the nurses talking about me by name in the hallway. And they're talking about how dumb I was because I planned a home birth and that I didn't know anything. And my mom's like, they just broke HIPAA.
Right, because of your name.
Exactly. They're like, anybody in the hallway could have heard you, like, they were speaking about you by name, not even room number, by name. Um, and so at this point, we're like, we just want to get out of there.
How long did you guys end up staying at the hospital before you finally got to go home?
So at this point, we're just desperate to leave because they're doing nothing to help. The room is freezing. And I asked if they thought a blood transfusion was necessary. And they're going, "No, you're doing good." Like, I'm as white as a sheet. Because what I didn't know what my hemoglobin levels were. So my last level before I left the hospital, I dropped down to a 6.
Mm.
We're like, okay, we just want to go. And so the last doctor comes in to see me right as my husband is going downstairs to like DoorDash Taco Bell. I am a vegetarian and I also have, or what I thought was, a gluten allergy. And so they gave me a beef sandwich for breakfast.
Right, which you wouldn't have been able to eat.
Like, I cannot eat any of this. So my husband runs downstairs and gets Taco Bell. And right as Taco Bell's he's grabbing the Taco Bell. The last doctor that saw me came to see me. He goes, "You know what? If I had your levels, I'd be in the OR with all kinds of blood being pumped into me, but you seem to be handling it fine."
Hmm, that's funny. I feel like hospitals would usually push transfusions on people who didn't want them, not the other way around.
You think that. And for me, like my husband's grandfather, meanwhile, out here in California, was getting a blood transfusion for hemoglobin dropping down to 7,
Man.
literally the same weekend. And so I'm like, "Oh, okay, when can I leave?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, we'll get you out." Now this conversation is at 8 a.m. He's like, "Yeah, I'll get your paperwork and you guys should be able to get out of here by no later than like 10:30." So my husband comes back. I tell him what the doctors just told me. He's like, "Great, let's get ready to go." Because the room is still freezing. The sun's up now, so it's helping a little bit from the window in the room, but it's still freezing in the room. And so we're waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. And it's noon now, and the doctor's still not come back in. We've called the nurse, and they're like, "Yeah, the doctor's working on it." And it's 12:30 and still no discharge paperwork. And finally at 1:30, they finally are like, "Oh yeah, the doctor forgot about you. He, you can be discharged now." So they gave us the discharge paperwork, and
Now, did the doctor forget about you, or did they want you to hit a 24-hour mark of being there for insurance purposes? Because I'm like, you got there.
because when we looked at the hospital bill, we were being charged $167 an hour for the room.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Why does that not surprise me?
So anyway, we finally get into the car, we head home, and we're like, finally, we get to enjoy being a family. But I am so weak. We get home, and my mom pulls up my charts, and she's like, your hemoglobin is 6. They let you go home with a hemoglobin of 6. And she's like, "Well, I'm gonna put you on every protocol I know." So my mom is pumping every iron building, blood building thing she can think of to get my hemoglobin up. I'm eating this concoction of blackstrap molasses and
Mhm.
all kinds of irons.
Spinach, and did she put you on, like, the Floradex?
Yep, she put me on Floradex, Hemoplex, you name it, anything she could think of. And I am just taking this stuff. I'm so weak. I can't walk without my heart rate getting above 170.
Gosh.
So my resting heart rate was 125. So
Mm.
I couldn't get out of bed without assistance. I was so weak. And I'm like burning calories like nothing. Luckily for me, my milk supply had come in. So I had a good milk supply. But my daughter, probably why she had her arms up by her head, she had torticollis. So her neck is like super tight and her latch wasn't super strong. So they take my daughter, she's not even 24 hours old, into the chiropractor.
Mhm.
And the chiropractor was able to adjust her. And so she's able to move. And after like 2 or 3 visits, she was able to nurse. So she's able to nurse now. And then a week postpartum, I just start feeling miserable.
I'm like, were you not already feeling miserable?
Well, more miserable. More miserable than I already was because I'm so weak. Like, I have to have someone with me 24/7. And my initial plan with her was to do like a side sleeper bassinet. We made it like 6 hours into the first night back from the hospital. And I was like, forget that. Put her in the bed with me. I can't roll over without help.
Right.
Well, we've been co sleeping ever since.
Oh, yeah. You and so many other moms.
There's nothing better. But anyway, so I just start feeling miserable. I take a COVID test, and sure enough, I caught COVID from the hospital.
Right, because where else would you have picked it up in the last week?
Yeah, exactly. And I tested negative in the hospital because that they had to have my test results before anyone could see me. The
Right?
thing that took them so long to see me is they wanted my COVID test results first.
Mhm.
So anyway, I now have COVID and I am terribly like depleted because I have no iron. I feel miserable. It took me about 3 days to get over it. So it's still, I was still able to get over it really quickly. And my daughter was nursing the whole time and didn't even touch her.
Right, she would have been totally fine. Yeah.
So she was completely fine. But my husband and I both get COVID. So my mom is doing, or I can't remember, my mother in law might have been the one doing it. I think it was my mother in law. She'd flown in from California and she's helping me do these hot and cold treatments, and all kinds of things to try and help me heal faster.
Mhm.
Finally get over COVID and I'm like, okay, good. But it took me about 3 weeks before I could stand up and walk
Yeah.
without help because I was just so weak. Something I wasn't like, I was prepared for labor. I wasn't prepared for postpartum. And I was 21 when I had her. So I was the first in my friend group to get married. And then I was also the first to have a child.
Mhm.
So, other than what I knew from my mom, I knew nothing about postpartum at all. And I'd spent so much time researching and focusing on birth because I thought that was the hard part.
Right?
That was a rude awakening.
Well, and you had a particularly rough postpartum,
I
like,
did. And I didn't realize how rough it was until I had my other daughters.
and saw how beautiful it actually could be.
Exactly how nice postpartum can be. Lovely.
So when do you feel like you, like, for lack of a better phrase, like, crawled out of the hole? Like, felt like you can walk again, you're good, she's nursing well, you feel like a human again,
I
like,
think when I crawled out of the first hole was about a month postpartum. And
okay,
at this point, my daughter is 13, 14 pounds. So
nice and
she,
heavy.
yes. So not only was she big when she was born, and I didn't quite know this because I never nursed a child before. She was nursing so much that she would overfill her stomach and then burp everything back up.
Yeah.
She was nursing constantly. It was like cluster feeding 24/7. She was waking up, I think it was only every 2 hours. So it wasn't that bad at night. Every 2 hours, she wanted to nurse. And then all day, she was on me nursing, 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 nursing. And I didn't realize that you're not supposed to have a baby that spits up that much. But I mean, it was my first, and I didn't know. And so she's spitting up all the time and she's getting really heavy really fast. But healing as far as down there went, we're going months and months, and I'm still having so much pain. So much pain. And the other thing is I had tons of cervical mucus. So I'm filling up like a panty liner every few hours.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, what is causing this? So I end up going into just a normal OB office in the area because I'm like, well, my CPM, this isn't her area of expertise. And they're not supposed to take care of you past 6 weeks postpartum. So I reach out and I end up going to a midwife OB practice, hospital based practice. And I go into the office. And when they finally see me after about an hour, she goes, well, you're testing negative for vaginosis, which,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And she's like, well, you're testing negative for it. I don't see anything, but I'll give you some antibiotics just in case.
Well, why would you need antibiotics?
Yeah. And so I'm sitting there like, I'm 5 months postpartum. I don't want to take antibiotics because I'm still nursing and I'm very, like I said, I don't like taking anything. And I'm
Right.
like, she just told me there's no reason for me to take antibiotics and then literally hands me a sample pack of antibiotics as I walk out the door. And I'm like, I did something I probably wouldn't suggest. And I grabbed a mirror and start trying to see if I can see an issue. And I
Right
reached
there in the office?
no, at home. So this is when
Okay.
I get home. So when I get home, I reached down and like I felt something hanging
Yeah.
and like pulled, and this tissue just comes out in my hand. And I'm looking like, what did I just do to myself? So I look at this and I call my mom. I'm like, Mom, what did I just do?
Did it
And she's like,
hurt?
it didn't hurt. And that's what was like
Did it
so
bleed?
to me. It didn't bleed either.
Huh.
So I discovered it was granulation tissue.
Yeah. I was like, I just had someone on the podcast sharing all about granulation tissue. So now I'm like, I bet that's what it was.
That's exactly what it was. And I was mortified until I did a bunch of research and talked to my mom. And she's like, I think that was granulation tissue. And at this point, my husband and I still are not able to have sex. We're like 4 or 5 months postpartum.
Mm-hmm.
But what I discovered is that granulation tissue is sitting on the gland that secretes cervical mucus.
So you just kept secreting and secreting and secreting.
Exactly. So once that was taken care of, it fixed all of that issue. So I'm like, okay, so second question, how did the midwife that saw me not see that when
When she
she
was examining you.
exactly.
Weird.
So then at this point, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to a pelvic floor physical therapist. And a pelvic floor physical therapist was able to help me. I had so much going on, but I was stitched up too tight. And that's one thing she was like, that's one of the reasons why you're having so much pain. And I also had a mild prolapse. I had a
Mm.
mild prolapse, plus I had like not pubic synthesis, diastasis.
Recti.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we start working on all of that. And a month later, I'm just feeling really bloated. And I look in the mirror, and my husband and I have finally been able to have sex again. And I look in the mirror and I'm just really bloated. And my husband looks at me and he goes, have you taken a pregnancy test? And I go, no. Why would I take a pregnancy test? I'm like, we've only been able to have sex a few times. And he goes, just humor me. He's like, just humor me. I was like, you're funny. There's no way. I'm like, I am not ready to do that again at all. And I was like, my period hasn't even come back. He's like, just humor me.
That's what I was gonna ask. Have you had a period yet?
I haven't had a period yet.
My guess
And
is you never
so
got one, did you?
so the one test I have in the house is like a clear blue digital. So I take the digital test, I hand it to him, and I'm just literally circling the room. I'm like, there's absolutely no way. There is no way. I'm just sitting at complete denial. And my husband goes, so do you want to know the result? I had to look over his shoulder and it says pregnant. And I was just in shock because here I have a 5 month old or 5, 6 month old, somewhere in that neighborhood. And now I have a positive pregnancy test. And I'm just getting to the point where I feel like a human again. Like my body doesn't feel like it's failing me and falling apart. And I'm like, I'm not ready. I'm just not ready. And so I'm like, okay, God, I guess let's do this again. And so I got into this point where I'd accepted it and I was beginning to get really excited. And 2 days later, I just get violently sick. I feel miserable and I take another test and it's fainter. And I take another test and it's fainter. And I was like, no, no. And we ended up losing that baby.
Mm.
And I went from this point of like, but I'm not ready, I'm not prepared to like really being excited. And it was only, I think we only knew about the baby for like 48 hours. And that was on a Friday that we found out. So on Monday, I go in, my midwife ordered labs for me. And I went in and she's like, I'm sorry. It shows that your levels are just high enough that it shows you were pregnant, but you've lost the baby. And so I lost that one, but then I get this like crazy baby fever.
Wow. That sounds on track, honestly, for having gone through that.
So I get this crazy baby fever, and I'm like, honey,
Meanwhile, you're holding a 6-month-old.
exactly. And so he's like, let's wait a month or two, and then maybe we can try. And so my cycle comes back after with that miscarriage, and a couple months later, and then I'm looking at my ovulation test because I'm doing natural family planning again. I'm looking at my ovulation test. I'm going, I'm not ovulating when I normally ovulate. I'm ovulating like a week later. And so I'm trying to do that. And then everything seemed kind of funky with my cycle. So I got very obsessive with this because I hate not knowing. So I started taking an ovulation test every day of my cycle because I wanted to track what my LH levels were doing. And my LH levels were raising right during when I would normally ovulate. Then they were falling and then they were spiking super high a week later. And they were actually positive. And I was like, so I'm trying to ovulate. Then my body's like, nope. And then trying again. So my cycles were longer and we tried for like 2 months, 2 or 3 months like that. And we're like, well, like, I guess it's not working, or I'd been tracking it for a while.
Well, and also you're nursing still, right?
Yeah. And I was still nursing. And
So
like I said,
between the nursing and the miscarriage and everything, like that's gonna make it hard for your body to like be super regular.
so my cycles had gotten like pretty long. They're like 40 something days at this point.
Mm.
So my daughter at 9 months was 30 pounds.
Girl. Oh my
Right.
gosh, you have to send me a picture of her at nine
I will
months. Please.
just rolls.
All the rolls.
Rolls. And we get to her first birthday. And my in-laws had come into town to be there for her birthday. My mom's in town. Everybody's there. We have her birthday. And I think it was the day before her birthday. I just am not feeling good. And I was gonna go like thrifting with my mother-in-law and her best friend. Because in the meantime, they had moved from California to Tennessee, where we were living at the time. And they get in my car, and I'm just not feeling good. And little did I know I had ovulated and I was pregnant, but I didn't know it. And she gets in the car and she goes, she's pregnant again.
Who is this prophetic woman?
Like, seriously, Kathy, I don't know what you know, but you always know. And so I just was not feeling good that day at all. And then 2 days later, we're picking up my mother in law and we're dropping her off at the airport. so she can fly back to California. And I'm sitting in the car and I just get this super sharp pain, like super, super sharp. Like, ow, like that kind of hurt. Well, 9 days after ovulation, I'm like, well, if I'm pregnant, I'm probably not. But if I'm pregnant, it should be positive by now because I test really early. And I've always been positive when I'm early. So I take a test and walk away truly expecting it to be negative once again because the tests for the past 2 or 3 months have been negative. So I'm like, well, it's gonna be negative. And I walk back in and it is very clearly positive. So I'm like, yes, we're gonna have another one. And I was really excited. And this is beginning of February of 23. So I'm super excited that we're going to have another one. My husband's really excited. And in the meantime, while all this was going on, we had been looking at our finances and going, his job just isn't cutting it with money. And so we were praying and praying and praying. And I had decided that there was absolutely no way I would ever move to California ever. And my husband's like, well, if you don't want to go, then we'll stay.
Now, why California? Is that just because like he has family there?
Yeah, I have phenomenal in-laws and they're all like my husband's parents, grandparents, sister, and like really amazing church community are all right here.
In California.
California. But meanwhile, like this is just post COVID. So like every time we'd flown back there, it was super shut down. And
So California is like
I was
not the place you want to be during
like,
COVID.
no, exactly. And at this point, like they started to lift all of the mandates and stuff, but I was still like, I don't know if I want to live there.
3 years later.
Exactly. So I vetoed it because his dad's the VP of a nonprofit out here. And his dad goes, listen, they just opened up a job. And it was 2 weeks before his dad called us. My husband goes, man, I wish I could do audio full time, like live audio. He loves it. And at the time, he was working as a production studio manager for a nonprofit in Tennessee. So he was really enjoying that, loved it, but he found audio and he's like, man, this is my favorite. And then 2 weeks later, his dad goes, hey, we're opening up a job for an audio engineer.
That's so
And I look
cool.
at my husband, I'm like, no. And this is a month before we get pregnant with Christy, our second. And so I completely vetoed it. And he's like, okay, then we won't do that. We'll stay here. But our finances, as everything got more expensive in Tennessee and his salary was staying where it was getting more and more expensive. And we're through my first trimester and my second trimester. I have my midwife again, and again, I adore her. I'm like, this is everything I want. I'm very happy. And then we get to early May, and we found out our daughter was a girl. We've had my 20-week ultrasound at this point, and my husband's like, what if I just put in an application? I'll just put in an application and we'll see what happens. I was like, okay.
At his dad's company?
Yeah. So his dad steps, if his name is pulled up, he completely steps out.
Of the process. Okay.
So, but the thing is, he'd worked with all of the media team in high school doing video editing. And so all of them had worked with him before. And so they immediately send his resume straight to the top of the list. And they call him back and they're like, hey, this is what we want to do. And they send him like the full benefits package, and he'd be making more than double what he was making in Tennessee.
Dang.
And we're like, oh, I was like, but I never wanted to move there. So I sat there and I argued with God again. It's like, Lord, really? This is the one place I said I didn't want to go. And I was like, yeah, I'm teaching you a lesson. So, and I don't say this with postpartum with Lottie, but so Lottie is my oldest. I don't know if I ever said her name, but she postpartum with her because of my rough recovery. And then the fact I had no friends with kids was really isolating because we were living in a college town and all of our friends were in college or directly post college. And really none of them were married. Most of them weren't even engaged at the time. So I just felt super, super alone. And about 6 months postpartum, I got desperate. I went to a mom's group on Facebook. I was like desperate to find friends. And I found a couple of friends and that started to pull me out. But I dealt with some serious postpartum depression. And I didn't want to label myself. So I
Mhm.
wouldn't even call it that. But it took me a while to get out of that hole. And then also that's when I miscarried again. And so then that spiraled me down again. So it was a really rough recovery. And I was like, oh, but I don't want to move. Like, I just got a good friend group, just got a good group of friends at church. Like, I want to stay here. I didn't want to leave, especially because at the time it was still a little bit cheaper in Tennessee than California. Now that's debatable, honestly. Every time I go back east, I'm like, yes, cheaper. No, the food prices aren't cheaper. The
No.
only thing cheaper is gas. But I have another long talk with God, and I'm like, Lord, this is not what I wanted, but I don't want to fight against your will. But I'm not moving before I have this baby because I wanted my midwife. And so I'm like, okay, honey, go for it. And so they end up hiring him. So we start packing up our house, and he starts his new job in July. But
Even though
she's in
you weren't due till November?
October.
October.
I'm not due until mid-October. So he starts his job in July. And what happens is I stay in our little apartment that we've been renting. And so I stay and he flies off the next 3 months. So
Oh,
I'm at the end of my pregnancy with a 1.5 year old. I'm super pregnant and I carry my kids way out. Like I have no torso, so I am all belly when I'm
yeah.
pregnant. And so I'm waddling around, and luckily, I have my best friend who has a little boy that's the exact same age as my daughter. So we're meeting every morning and going for like a 3 mile walk together just to keep me active and not shut away in my house, wishing my husband was here.
Yeah.
That was a challenge. And I look back and I think that was just me being really stubborn because I did not want to give up my midwife for anything. She's amazing and exactly the kind of person you want in the birth room. She's very calm, very reassuring, but not completely checked out, if you know what I mean. Like
Yeah.
she's very and she's supportive and I love her. And I didn't want to give that up for the idea of like an OB in a hospital birth, especially because I know midwives in California are charging about double what they do out east.
Mhm.
So I was like, well, I'll stay. And so I stay. My husband's gone. And I think he came back to visit once. So we get to about 2 weeks before my due date and he flies back out. But there's a catch. About a week after my due date, he has to be back at our church to run a prophecy series.
The church in California?
The church in California.
Okay.
So I'm now on a time crunch. I've put myself on a time crunch because they need him back at work to run the prophecy series. And then he can take like his PTO.
Paternity leave after that.
Exactly. But he has to be there for that because he's the only audio guy they have.
Oof. No pressure. No pressure.
No pressure at all. So, and I'm like, well, this is great. My first baby came the day before her due date. My second will come before her due date too, obviously. Big mistake yet again.
Mhm.
So I get to my like a week before and I lose my mucus plug and I'm like, great. And then nothing. And nothing. And I'm walking every day. I'm going up and down stairs. I am doing everything I can think of to try and tip my body over the edge and go into labor. And nothing. And I get to my due date and I'm just so mad. I'm like, God, I have a time crunch. And I've listed all these prayers out and I'm like, God, I want this and I want this and I want my labor to be like this and I want my postpartum to be like this, this, this. And instead of being like, Lord, your will be done, I was like, Lord, I want my will. And so I'm sitting there and I'm still pregnant and it's my due date and I'm so frustrated. And I go into my midwife and she's like, I didn't want to see you today. I wanted you to have a baby. And I'm like, me too. So I was sitting there very frustrated, very, oh, just mad at gods. My mom comes down from Michigan the next day and she goes, how about I give you a cervical sweep or a membrane sweep? And I go, okay. So I have my mom give me a membrane sweep in the morning. It's the day after my due date.
So how dilated were you then? I assume she would have checked you. Huh?
Yeah, I was 2 centimeters.
Well, that's a start.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, at least I'm something. And so I'm 2 centimeters. I'm just so over being pregnant at this point, too. And so I go into the bathroom because I have to pee, obviously. Like, 'cause you have to pee like every 2 hours at minimum.
Mm-hmm.
And I have bloody show. And I'm like, yes, bloody show. I'm going to have this baby today.
Well,
Yeah. Well, 4:15 p.m. and I get a contraction. I'm like, yes. And I start getting these super long, but not painful contractions. And so my mom's there. And again, I do exactly what I did the first time. I jumped the gun and I called my sister and I call my sister-in-law and I'm like, yeah, I'm in labor. Come. And so they come over and I'm sitting in my birth sling and on my like birth ball and I'm just going through the contractions, but the contractions are like 2.5 minutes long.
mm.
So they're really long. And my midwife goes, do you mind? And she ends up coming over and she's like, do you mind if I check you? And she's like, I'm sorry, you're still 2 centimeters. She's like, I think baby's in a funky position. And at this point, I've been in labor for 5 hours. And so she's like, I think baby's in a funky position. Why don't you try to go to sleep? It's 9 or 10 p.m. She's like, try and go to sleep and we'll see what happens. I'm going to go home. Call me when you need me.
So how far apart were your contractions then?
My contractions were like 4 minutes apart.
So try to doze off in between contractions then.
But as soon as I lay down, they start going away. And I'm like, no, I was so mad. They start going away. And I'm just so frustrated. And through the night, I was woken up about every hour getting a contraction. So they spaced out a ton.
But it's good that you were able to get some rest though.
Was good, but with my impatient mind, I was not happy about it. So, yeah, I'm very frustrated at this point. And we wake up in the morning at like 5 a.m. and my husband's like, have you prayed? Have you given that to God? I was like, no, I'm so mad. He's like, let's pray about it. So we pray and my contractions start up and they're getting closer again. And so I was like, yes, I'm in labor. It is Friday morning and my husband has to leave by Monday.
Oof.
So I am sitting there like, okay, let's have the baby today. At this point, I've been in labor for like 12 plus hours. And I am sitting at home. I'm still getting contractions, but they're kind of sporadic again. And again, I'm getting frustrated. And it's like noon, around noon. And my husband looks at me and goes, let's get out of the house. So my mom, my sister-in-law, and my sister are all sitting in the house, and I just feel like a watched pot. And I'm like, okay, let's go. So we go for a 2-mile hike.
Nice.
So we get out, we drive over to this place that we love to go hiking, and we go for a 2-mile hike. And now my contractions are coming like every 3-4 minutes. They're getting very regular, and I'm having to constantly stop. And I'm looking at this giant hill in front of me and looking at my husband like, maybe we should go to civilization and not be in the woods. He's like, okay, let's get to the car. He's like, but this is working. And my husband is also trying to make me laugh. So I'm like laughing hysterically while trying to go through a contraction in the woods. We finally get back to my car and then it just torrential downpour. We're like, well, it's a good thing we got back to the car.
Yeah.
So, and then I was like, but can I have boba?
On my way home, let's make a stop.
Exactly. So he's like, okay, we'll go get boba. So we go to boba, and it's owned by one of the local churches in the area. It happens to be the pastor that is standing at the cash register that day. So we walk in and my husband starts chatting with them and they're just having a good old conversation. And then I get a contraction and I start swaying and I'm in active labor at this point. And so I start swaying and like I'm not feeling the need to vocalize yet, but I can't talk through it. And the pastor looks at me. He looks at my husband, goes, "Is she okay?" And my husband's like, "Oh, yeah, she's just in labor." And the pastor's like, "Oh, wait, can I boil some water? Here, let me get a chair." And he's like, "No, she doesn't want to sit. And we don't need the water. It's fine." So I go through like three contractions. He's just sitting there like, "Is she okay?" And at this point, Justin's like, "Ah, she's fine." So we were there for, like I said, about 15 minutes. And we walk outside, and my water breaks as soon as we walk out the door.
Oh, well, at least you didn't get it on the floor.
Yeah.
Okay, so when your water broke, what time was that?
So this is 2 p.m.
I assume you headed home at that point.
So at this point, we're like, well, this is going so well. What if we walk next door? So next door, there's a Tractor Supply. We walk into this Tractor Supply, and I get about halfway through the store, and I get this much stronger contraction. And I look at my husband like, we've got to get out of here because I need to moan. And the last thing anybody walking into a Tractor Supply wants to hear is me vocalizing in labor. So I like waddled as fast as I could to the back of the store. And I'm sitting there through this contraction, trying my best not to be like moaning. And as soon as that contraction was over, we darted as fast as we could out to the car. We get in the car and we drive straight home. And we're only about 10 minutes from my house. So we drive back to the house and we get there and we're like, good news, her water is broke. And we're definitely in active labor because my contractions are about every 3 minutes now. And so they're getting much closer. And so they fill up the birth pool at this point. And I'm just riding the contractions, going through them. And then I'm able to get in the water probably around 4 or 5, probably in there.
So does your midwife come back yet?
Yes, my midwife came back when we came back.
Okay.
As soon as we got back, we called her again. So she comes back. Everybody's there. So my sister-in-law and sister are making food and enjoying everything. I'm between contractions finishing my boba. And so enjoying that. And then I'm able to get into the water. So I'm like, oh, water again. I wasn't having back labor this time, so that was much better. And my contractions were much more functional than they were at the beginning of my labor. So 4 o'clock comes, and now I've been in labor for 24 hours. So I am very, very ready to just be done. So I'm like, oh, okay. And then I finally hit transition around 7, probably 7:30. And again, I don't know why, but I crawled back out of the water again. I didn't want to be in water through transition. So I crawl out of the water, I lay down, and I just go through the contraction again or the transition. And I'm sitting there thinking, why in the world did I want to have home birth again?
What goes through your mind right before you push a baby out?
Exactly. I'm like, I don't want to deal with this. This is so painful. Why? So typical transition thoughts going through my mind. And then I get through transition. I'm like, okay, I want to go back into the pool. So I go back into the birth pool. But this time, instead of sitting on my like kind of reclined position, I'm like, no, I want to lay on my side. So I lay down on my side in the water, like with my head propped up, and my husband's holding ice packs on my head. And I'm going through it and I start pushing and I push for about 7 minutes or not even, it's about 5 minutes at this point. And then I just feel this pop and it like scared me. I'm like, what is that? And it was my second, like the second layer of water's breaking. And at first it was such a strong feeling. I was like, did I push her out? And they're like, no, push your waters again. I was like,
Round 2.
I was like, okay. So I pushed for another 2 minutes and Christiana is born. So she joins the world in a much nicer fashion than her older sister. No hands up by her head. And this time everybody's looking at her like, oh, she's got to be smaller than Lottie was. Gotta be. There's no way she's over 9 pounds. Like she looks so little. And so my midwife is like, okay, like she's out now. Let's pull you out of the water because I just want to make sure you don't hemorrhage again. So we pull me out of the water and I lay down on some Chuck's pads and she's like, your bleeding is doing great, but you do have a 2nd-degree tear right on your old scar tissue.
Mm.
It's like she's like, but goodness, it's not a bad 2nd-degree tear. So she calls one of the other midwives up because I gave birth to her at 8 p.m. on the dot. And so they're cleaning up everything and they put Christy on the scale. And she goes, so you're never going to believe this. I was like, she's not more than Lottie was. There's no way. She goes, she's 4 ounces heavier. She's 9 pounds, 8 ounces. 9 pounds. There's no way. And she was an inch longer though. So the inch in height
Yeah.
made
her not as chunky. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny because now, like 2+ years later, it's still that way. She is still much leaner and also taller age-wise than my oldest.
Yeah.
But so yeah, it was an absolutely beautiful, beautiful birth. It was just much longer. And I've been hoping that I have my mom's short labors, but no, not for me.
Well, your active labor wasn't 27 hours, which is good. It was
About 8.
Yes. So better than before, which is good, which is to be expected. But so did your midwife then, I assume, sew up your tear right there at home? Yeah.
So my midwife, I crawled into bed and she stitched up the tear there for me. They cleaned up my house and it looked beautiful. It was marvelous.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was Christy's birth. But then my milk comes in on day 1 or 2 after she was born. So she's born on the 20th and by the 21st, 22nd, I'm like super engorged, have tons and tons of milk. And my husband, everybody's packing up the house around me because what we were still living with is all getting packed up, thrown on a truck, and my husband is leaving back to California.
Mm.
So his dad has flown in to help him with that process. So they're all running around me, packing up everything but like 1 suitcase worth of stuff. So our whole house is getting packed up around me, but I'm feeling great postpartum, as great as you can feel after just having a baby.
Right.
So I'm feeling really good. And Christy is nursing great. Everything is going really, really well on that front. But I've just got so much milk because it's coming and coming and coming and coming. And all I have at this point is my Haka because I've packed up my normal pump and thrown it in with the rest of our stuff. And so I'm getting tons and tons of milk and I'm producing around 40 ounces a day on top of nursing her. And I was also still nursing Lottie, our oldest at the time. So I'm nursing a toddler, a baby, and then I've got about 40 ounces of milk every day on top of that.
Mm.
And I'm like, what am I going to do with all this milk? I can't fly with it.
Yeah.
So I luckily had a friend who wasn't able to produce. So I ended up giving her about 400 ounces that I produced in the 2 weeks between her birth and when we moved to California.
My mind is just like, so that was all from the Haka?
It was all from the Haka.
Dang. So it was just catching whenever you were nursing, like on the other side.
Yep.
Holy Haka. That's a lot of milk.
Yeah. I am a super producer.
Wow.
There was just so much milk that like our little freezer was completely stuffed within the 2 weeks post her being born. And this time, aside from deciding to move all the way across the country at 18 days postpartum, everything was going really, really well. So I was feeling great. I hadn't hemorrhaged this time. So yeah, we packed up our lives and moved back to my husband's hometown in Northern California. Me still kind of begrudgingly, not super excited to leave all my friends. But yeah, we moved when she was 18 days old, and I started getting mastitis so bad.
Right when you moved?
Right before. So I got it, I think, twice before we moved when she was 18 days old.
And then you
So
had to
I
move
got
while you
get it.
had mastitis?
I had just come like out of it. I figured out like a homeopathic protocol that if I take it, it clears up the mastitis. So it'll get rid of the clog and then all the mastitis symptoms go away too.
Wow.
It's amazing.
Do you remember the name of the remedy?
So I use a mix between taking the sunflower lecithin, and then the other thing I take is I think it's duct flow tincture. I can send it all to you. It's
Oh,
amazing.
okay.
I also take what is it, heifer sulfus, a couple of different homeopathics, and arnica montana.
Okay.
And between taking all of that, it gets rid of everything.
Wow.
So
That's good.
I've
I
gotten
have
a
a cousin who suffers from mastitis, like, on a regular basis after she has her babies, like, gets it basically, like, once a week. It's so bad.
That's what it was like for the first couple of months after her or after my oldest.
Mm.
So my middle, not my oldest, my middle. I'm getting them all mixed up. But anyway, so yeah, so I've gotten mastitis, I think, twice by the time that we moved, and she was 18 days old. My mom came with me to help us because I had
I
to
was like,
pay.
"You didn't drive, did you?"
No, so my husband drove all the stuff.
Okay.
My husband and father-in-law drove our cars and all of our belongings. And then my mom came back down because at this point she came for the birth and then she came back down when she was like 16 days old. And then
Okay.
my mom and I flew out from Nashville. So we drive up to Nashville. We've all of the things left, and our newest 18-day-old baby, and then our almost 2-year-old. And we flew from Tennessee to California. So, and then we get here, and I realize that I know no one, but everybody knows me.
Because of your husband's family.
Exactly. And we also got married here. Yeah. So we go to a church that's got about 900 members that my husband's father planted when he was in middle school.
So is your husband's dad a pastor?
Yes.
Cool.
It's kind of complicated. He's the VP of a nonprofit, but that nonprofit is also attached to a church.
Okay.
So it's a ministry. And so anyway, everybody, I get there and I show up at church the first week. She's like 3 weeks old, and everybody comes up to me and they're like, "We're so glad you're here." I'm giving out hugs left and right, and I know no one, but they all know me by name and know our kids, know everything. And a lot of them are like, "Oh yeah, is it your wedding?" Which we had a wedding with like 400 people. So
So you didn't know most of them.
no. This is Michigan girl with a wedding in California and transplanted. So like I didn't know anyone. I know very few people. So and everybody knew me and they were so warm and welcoming. But at the same time, like I had no mom friends. And so I went down another unfortunate trail of postpartum depression because I just felt so lonely. And it's also like I had her end of October. So I had her, and then it's winter and it's cold. So it's harder to get out and meet people. So for another several months, like I'm still dealing with postpartum depression, except this time it's more manifesting as postpartum rage,
Mm.
which I'm like, what is wrong with me? So after several months, I was able to like one figure out what it was, and then two, it started to become summer, and so I started meeting more people, and it went away. So that was my experience postpartum with her, and I had again tons of milk. So I then produced another like 800 ounces before I was able to slow down my supply.
Wow.
So before I was able to slow down my supply and then get it normalized, but then I had all this milk sitting around. So I ended up giving it away to another mom here. And I was able to make some really good friends. And then I realized like I actually really love it here. And I should not be so resistant to moving.
Because where in California are you guys?
I'm in Northern California, so I'm halfway between Sacramento and Tahoe. So I'm in
Okay.
a little town called Colfax. It is marvelous. I love it.
Well, I'm just like looking out your window and I'm like, it looks beautiful wherever you are.
It is gorgeous. But yeah, so that was my postpartum with my second. So we named her Christiana. And with each of our kids, their name means something. So my oldest, her name is Lottie, and her full name means little woman given to God.
Oh.
And then my middle, her name is Christiana, and it means beloved follower of Christ. And then we'll get into what my youngest means a little bit. But then we're about a year postpartum with my oldest or with my middle, and we're thinking, okay, like, should we start trying again? We know we wanted a relatively large family, and we're praying about it because we don't want them super spaced out. But I was like, I just don't know if we're ready to try it again. And then my husband's work, you can choose between two different insurance options. And those insurances, one of them covered a birth center and one did not. So our plan was like, okay, we'll switch from the one we have to the other one. And then we can have a birth center birth this time. It's not a home birth, but it's also not a hospital birth.
And so your reason for not doing a home birth was purely financial because the midwives in California are so expensive
The average is $8,000.
for a home birth midwife.
Yeah.
So some of them are probably like 10 grand and yeah.
Well, which is a little bit too much for us, especially when my husband's work, his insurance is incredibly good. So our out of pocket is $250.
For the birth center.
Yeah.
Well, that's why our second was born at a birth center instead of a home birth for that exact same reason. It was like, oh, you could have a free birth over here, free financially, not a free birth, a financially free birth. Or, at the time, I think it was about $4,000 for a home birth. And I was staying at home and my husband was working as a pastor at a church. And it was like, well, that made our decision for us.
Yep, exactly. And that was also one of the other reasons I decided to stay in Tennessee. And the other problem here is most of the midwives are very chakra woo-woo. They're not.
Oh, they're not like Christian believing, Jesus loving midwives. They're like, ooh, what's your aura and what are the energies and give me some crystals. Like, yeah. It's not anyone who has the Holy Spirit living inside of them. That is not your vibe for sure.
And I had a wonderful midwife that I knew she's praying for my birth and praying for me. And like, that's what I want. I want someone who, if something goes wrong, is calling on the same name as me.
Right. You want the presence of the Lord at your birth. You don't want to open a door to demonic forces at your birth. Like, yeah, understood and agreed.
So that was one of the reasons we stayed there, or I stayed there. And then, so it's October, November of 2024 at this point. So my youngest is a year old. I have a almost 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. And we're like, should we try again? And should we not? And we're like, you know what? We really like the providers we have right now, because we had a clinic that was not even really asking us if we wanted to vaccinate her kids. So I was like, and if I switch, I'm not going to have that. So we're going to stay with the insurance we have for this year. And then we'll plan on having a baby calendar year of 2026.
Oh,
so
I see that plan didn't work out.
No, it did not. It was not what I was initially planning. So we kept the insurance we had. We were very happy with this. I'm like, okay, we'll have a little bit of a larger age gap. I'll get some more time to breathe. We're all good. Then it's December, beginning of December. We've locked in our insurance choice for the year. And then it's our wedding anniversary, December 20. And I'm like, that temperature chart is not looking like a not pregnant woman. Like, that is very suspicious. So I looked at my husband. It's the day before our anniversary. I was like, so should I take the test today or tomorrow? He's like, just wait until tomorrow. So I'm 10 days past ovulation. It's our 4-year wedding anniversary. So I take the test and I come out of the bathroom. I was like, so what's your guess? He's like, you're pregnant, aren't you? It's like, yep. I am very much pregnant. He's like, well, we can't change our insurance.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. You can reach me at Surrendered Birth Services on Instagram or email me at contact@surrenderedbirthservices.com. Be sure not to miss an episode by hitting the follow button. Also, we'd love for you to leave a written review of the show so that more people's births and lives can be changed by the love of Jesus and the empowerment of accurate birth education. If you really enjoyed this episode in particular, please take a screenshot of it and post it to your Instagram story, tagging Surrendered Birth Services. If you would like to be a guest on the Surrendered Birth Stories podcast, please click the link in the episode show notes to fill out your interest form. Also, if you're interested in taking my childbirth classes, birth consultations, or having me as your birth doula, please click on the link in the show notes to take you to my website for online and in-person options. Just as a reminder, this show is not giving medical advice, so please continue to see your personal care provider as needs arise. We hope you have a great week, and remember, learn all that you can, make the best plans, and then leave it in God's hands.
Her name is Christiana. And speak of her,
I'm like, there she is.
Christy. Mama. Yeah. Oh, you want a hug? Okay. We'll give you a hug. Can you say hi?
Hi.